I'm Dr. Guzman. I'm an ER physician over at Cook Children's. I started a program called Aim for Safety, trying to get awareness around firearm injury prevention for families and children. I started the program in 2017, and we've been able to, develop a program to kind of reach families, children, schools, and now Fort Worth Fire, which has become our partner. And we're excited about the opportunity to be able to educate and for you guys to go out and do the same thing that we're doing as well. So, what Cook Children's is, we are obviously the biggest children's healthcare system here in Tarrant County and in the area. And so we are part of the Community for Children, the Center for Community Health. I'll get that back right eventually. So the Center for Community Health, which is also a part of Safe Kids Worldwide, which is an organization all about injury prevention. So what we do at Cook Children's is we get data to be able to find the best ways to reach our families and children to provide injury prevention ways to stay safe. So one of the things that we talk about with gun safety education is this is something that we do not have a voice as far as politically. Our goal is to stay right down the middle and provide the education. We don't want families to know anything about what I feel personally about guns. And so I think this is the most important part. This is not a political statement. We're here to provide education to those families as well, and to the children. So when it comes to so what we'll do is we're going to review the state national data as well as what we see here in Fort Worth, Tarrant County. We're going to go over some of the things that you can do at home to be safer. We're going to talk about those different things that we all fall prey to, those myths about guns and safety in our home, that families all have these ideas that the way they grew up, and even now how we teach our children. And so those are the important things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what are the key important parts of gun safety that we can provide our families, and we can give them that information in addition to something like a gun safe. That's going to be really key to the things that we do in our education with our families. Nationally, we see so many firearm injuries. There are over 400 million guns in our country. And that's a soft estimate when you think about the numbers that are out there. And so when you look at our community, there's so many firearms in and around that we don't know about in most cases, right? You may be a licensed to carry holder, and that's okay, right? We don't worry about that, but we have to understand that those guns are out there, and they affect our families, they affect our friends, and we want to be able to, from our standpoint, be able to provide that education so that we don't see these guys. You guys don't get called to these calls, and I don't see them in our ER. So that's going to be really important. One out of every 5 Americans in this country owns a firearm. I'm sure most of you guys in the room own a firearm at home. If you grew up in Texas, some own more than one firearm. And so when you look at the numbers, 1 out of every 3 homes in the nation, there is a gun with a child under the age of 17. And that's really important. That's really something striking to me, that 1/3 of Americans own a firearm. And also have kids that are under the age of 17. And so when you look at the national numbers, over 1,300 kids die every year. And that's all comers up to the age of 17. Those include unintentional injuries, those include suicide, and also those homicides that we see as well. And so, again, we want to make sure that we're doing all the right things. You know, you talk to families, and studies have shown that 1/3 of Americans, as we talked about, own a firearm. 1/3 say that they're thinking about owning a firearm. And in this day and age, the political times, that can be scary, right? You know, with things that people are saying, most people are wondering, do I need to own a firearm? And that's scary to us, I think, as a medical field, only because you're getting folks who never owned a gun in their lives and now have a firearm in their home, and are they getting all the education around that to make themselves safe, even though they feel like they're going to be safer with a gun because they're going to put down a threat that somebody may come to their door. So that's one of the things that we have to balance that understanding about why people have firearms. And then there's 1/3 of our society that will say, I'll never own a firearm, and I'll never pick up a firearm. I don't want anything to do with a firearm, but they're still at risk. If they have children, their kids may go to somebody else's house where there is a firearm. So we have to be cognizant of that and understand that it's still a risk, whether you own a firearm or not, that your children could find a firearm somewhere in their daily lives. When you look at Texas, over 500 children die or are injured every year as a result of firearms. Most of those, again, are homicides, but we're seeing an increase in our suicide rate as well. We see about, here for children, we see anywhere from 5 to 6 kids every year that die as a result of firearms, and that's pretty significant. That's any one death is important, right? Much less 5 or 6, and so we want to reduce that number as much as we can to 0. In Texas, like nationally, 1/3 of households in Texas also own a firearm, and some of the numbers and some of the estimates are that about 200,000 kids plus actually live in a home with a firearm that's not stored properly. That means it's sitting in a drawer in a closet with bullets in it and ready to be fired. And that's scary. That should be scary to all of us. That's something that when you talk to families and you go out and work in the ER, or whether or not we're in the community or not, that when you talk to these families and you hear that there's a gun in the house, that they feel comfortable with what they taught their children and the risk that they feel about having a gun in the home, that they feel comfortable that they talk to their children well enough and educate them enough that they'll never pick up that firearm. And studies will show that that's not the case. From 2019 to 2020, over 40 million guns were purchased in our country, and that's a national data bank. And that's because of what was going on politically. We had COVID going on. We had politically, there was a lot of back and forth about how, what we're going to do with guns. And so we had a whole bunch of folks that went out there and bought a gun for the first time in their lives, which put a whole lot of folks at risk. That increase was almost 40% from the year before. That's pretty significant when you think about the numbers. 40% of people in our country went out and bought a gun. I think this slide is important when you look at just our part of the world, Tarrant County and Fort Worth, that when you look at the number of people who own who have license to carry, it's about 66,000 people. When you compare that to Harris County, it's 117,000 people. So obviously Harris County is a lot bigger than Tarrant, but we're catching up. But there's also 3 counties around us, Dallas, Collin, and Denton, that are up there in the top 5. And so that tells me that there's a lot of folks who own a gun, a lot of folks that I don't know that own a gun because they're carrying that, secretly, if you will, and that's okay. They have a license to carry that. But as a parent, I don't know that person has a gun in their home. And so I want to make sure that we're doing all the right things, whether you're a gun owner or not, that we're asking those questions and talking about those guns. But there's obviously room for education. There's ways, because of that number, I think it's really important that we ask those questions and we talk about this. It's not a taboo subject anymore, that we are engaging our family members, whether they're aunts, uncles, cousins, grandfathers, and our friends, our neighbors, about guns, and whether our kids are going to go over, or they're going to, you have kids in the home or coming over, that we talk about those so that we make sure that we're all on the same page, we'll understand that safety is important, and that we want to keep our kids safe, so that we don't see them in the ER as well. So, in Texas, it is a crime to allow a child to access a firearm. It's a Class A and a Class C misdemeanor, depending on what exactly occurs. And what that means is if a child can find a gun or a parent fails to secure that gun, they're able to find that gun and it's readily dischargeable. Whether or not there's a bullet in the chamber or not, that could be cause enough for negligence, and that could be a Class C misdemeanor. If that child picks up that gun and takes it to school, it's a Class C misdemeanor in addition to a fine, and that's all that happens to that person who owns that firearm. Now, if that child discharges that firearm, hurts somebody else, or hurts themselves, it becomes a Class A misdemeanor. And now that's punishable by some time in jail, up to about 1 to 2 years. Again, still doesn't seem significant enough in my mind that you can allow a child to find a gun, shoot somebody or themselves, and the consequences are very low. There are laws called child access protection laws that different states in the country have. And you'll note that some states that have higher or more penalties for access to firearms have reduction in the overall number of kids who are unintentionally injured, or have injuries as a result of suicide or homicide. And that's significant. There's about a 15 to 20% decrease in all of those numbers across the board. And that's really important. That we need to make sure that we're doing all the right things as a state, as a local government, to make sure that we're reducing the risk and have robust laws so that we can have consequences for having firearms that are accessible by our children in this country. So when you look at what we did a study back in 2021, and we looked at firearm injuries that took children over the course of about 10 years, 2012 to 2021. And so it was pretty significant to note that The vast majority of injuries that we saw were related to BB guns and pellet guns, but also handguns. Handguns were up there as part of the major player. Where those injuries occurred, the vast majority were kind of head, neck, face, and then extremities. When you look at that, gosh, when you look at extremities, no big deal, right? I can fix somebody who gets shot in the arm or in the leg, but I can't fix somebody who has an injury kind of to that major part of the body, head, face, neck, and chest, where obviously all our vessels, our heart is at, our lungs, which can definitely cause significant damage. And that's what we see, unfortunately, is when we see kids who pick up a gun and they shoot themselves, it's that head face injury that is almost unrecoverable. And if they do recover from something like that, they're changed forever. And it's not the same child that you had prior. So this is why it's so important that we talk about this. And when you look at where these injuries occur, the vast majority occur in the home. And this is where you guys, Fort Worth Fire, are in every single day. This is what we see in the ER. Like we talk about this and we take this to the community that these injuries are happening in our homes, and we have to be aware of that, understand why it's happening, and then take those steps to make sure that we're doing the most we can to reduce that risk. Over the last 5 years, you can see in this slide that we, on average, see anywhere from 45 to 61 kids per year that are injured as a result of firearms. Last year we saw 5 kids that were shot fatally, and that's important. As we talked about earlier, any one child who dies from something like this, that's preventable. And that's, I think, the key word for all of this is prevent. We want to reduce the risk and prevent these injuries from happening, because we can do that. We can provide simple steps to make us all safer and make our kids safe. Overall, common myth that families have, parents have, gun owners have about firearms and kids is my child knows not to touch my gun. I grew up in Texas my entire life. We had guns in our home. It seemed like it was a different time. We had guns in a closet that I was told I should never touch. Now, as a kid, I never listened to my parents the entire time, so I would go into that closet, open the door, look at the guns, I would actually touch them. Luckily, I never got shot. One was a 243 and a 30-06. That was amazing to know that those were loaded and ready to go. That could have been disastrous for me and my family. But again, this is how important it is to talk about this, because our kids aren't going to do what we tell them all the time. And if you look back as you were growing up, the same thing. You kind of push the envelope a little bit because you were trying to grow and be your own person. But at the same time, we have to, as parents, understand that I want to allow my kid to make mistakes, but I don't want them to make fatal mistakes. And this is where the guns can be extremely fatal. Another common myth is my child doesn't even know we have a gun. And we see a lot of kids that cook. They come in for behavioral evaluations, and when you talk to the kids, or you ask them, how are you going to do this? What's your plan? A lot of them will say, I'm going to use a gun. I'm like, well, where are you going to get this gun from? Well, my mom has a gun in the closet. She doesn't even know I know about it. And that's a real game changer right there for me. And you talk to that mom or that dad, and they're like, oh my gosh, I thought we got the gun in the house, quietly. Nobody knew that it was there. But kids know things are there. My kids, I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And when they get quiet, they're either doing something or they're listening. And my kids are really good at that. They're really good at understanding and listening about, mom and dad are talking about something. What can we kind of gain from that? And if they're not, my 9-year-old is probably getting in trouble with breaking something. But again, that's really important. That even though we think that we're clever and we're able to do things, the kids know exactly what's going on. They're explorers. They kind of will run the house and they'll find things that we think that they'll never find. The other thing is my gun is in reach, but it always has a safety on. We should never rely on safety as a last measure of safety at all. Those things can fail, and we've seen plenty of injuries as a result of safety that failed, and children get shot, adults get shot as a result of that as well. Another thing that parents feel like, well, my gun's not loaded, or there's not one in the chamber. That's one of the things I think we hear a lot of. There's not one in the chamber. I think we're safe. That kids are extremely great dexterity, and they, in this day and age of seeing videos and games, they know how to manipulate something. They know how to manipulate a firearm to be able to put one into the chamber. They understand that. So just because it's not loaded doesn't mean they can't find the ammunition to be able to put them together to end something to end in tragedy. The other thing, parents always seem to feel like their kids know the difference between a real and a toy gun, and we'll show an example of this in a minute. That's really difficult no matter who it is to know the difference and be able to detect that. quickly. But again, that can end in disaster. When we talk about the number of unintentional injuries in our country, in 2020, a study was done that showed that about 16% of the children that died as a result of an unintentional firearm injury, they thought it was a toy. And so that's pretty significant when you think about those numbers that kids will think it's a toy and they can't tell the difference between one or the other. And then finally, the one that's probably the most difficult to get past is this is how we've always done it, this is how we grew up, and this is how I need to do it in my family. And that's really a huge obstacle that you have to really try to navigate that conversation. You have to help them understand that just because that you grew up this way, things have changed so much that the risk has also changed for your child and for your family. That's not the way to do it. We need to be able to be safer and do it in a way that makes sense, that doesn't infringe on anybody's rights, but we, in the end, don't have these injuries that come into our ER. So when we look at who's at risk, we look at the small kids, and this is preschool children. Kids are explorers and observers. They like to, anybody who has kids knows that their child can go from here to there in a split second. You don't know where they're at half the time, and you hear things breaking, or they're really quiet getting into things. And so I think that's something that we all, and that's something that happens so quick. If you only have one kid and you're kind of learning, you learn that process, you learn the hard way sometimes because kids can get into things and cause themselves some damage. But I think as the kids get older, we have to realize we're all busy, we're trying to focus on feeding a baby, you're taking phone calls, you're still working, but we still have to have these things in our back of our mind to be able to stay safe, and this is what we're here to help people remind them of, is that there are things you can do to be safe despite what the world feels like and how everything is instant, and that we're trying to manage the day. This is something that we have to help people understand, that this is something that our kids are really at risk. Physical abilities. Folks feel like a 2-year-old can't pull the trigger on a gun. When you look at the pressure settings on a gun, if you will, you can set trigger pressure from anywhere from about 2.5, 3 pounds to as much as 12 pounds. So the higher that number is, the harder it is to pull that trigger. Well, the average gun comes with about 5.5 pounds of pressure. So you can equate that to cracking an egg. Cracking an egg takes about 5 pounds of pressure. So if they can crack an egg, they can pull the trigger back. Another way they do is they turn that gun and they point it at their face and they use their thumbs as fulcrums to push both thumbs down and release that trigger, and obviously the injury occurs. So don't think that a 2-year-old, 3-year-old can't do it. They can, and that's one of the things we talk to parents about. Self-control is another big thing. It's hard at 52 to have self-control. Definitely at the ages of 4, 5, and 6, that's really difficult, and that's another important thing that we need to be aware of and provide that information to our families. And then understanding overall. Their overall world right now is magical play. You add video games and TV shows, and that becomes really more difficult to navigate. Because they feel like, well, if somebody dies, they come back to life, like in a game. But they don't realize in the real world that happens. You're not coming back to life. That's not going to happen. And that really holds true for the kind of 12 to 14 age group as well, that they're so immersed in video games these days, something like Grand Theft Auto that we hear a lot of when we go to schools and talk to kids. Grand Theft Auto is one of those games that people are playing, but that is so violent. You see kids that are running over other kids or people with cars, they're shooting people, they have knives, and they don't realize as that world, they become immersed in that world that's not how the world works, right? And that becomes something that we as parents have to navigate and help them understand that, and limit. I think that's another thing that is hard to do, is limit kids. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about just screen time with their kids. As a pediatrician, we want to have them on whatever screen it is for less than 2 hours. Is that practical? Not always. Not in my life as well, right? Because we're busy, and at times you need to be able to do something, go to work, and it's not always practical to say, I'm going to do 2 hours or less. But we have to try to strive to do that to help them and give them to understand that screen is not the biggest part of the world, but they can become so immersed in that they don't know the difference. And that's what we really need to do. As we move on, there's a picture here of 2 different guns, and one of my questions is, can you tell which one the real one is? And the answer most often is 50-50, I think. I don't know if you guys want to look at that and see. Tell the group how you felt to this presentation. So the right one ends up being the real gun. But it's really difficult to tell. The one on the left is a days, guns are made so well that you can't tell the difference. And even guns, even in handguns, in that handgun world, are made so powerful as well. So they can shoot just as fast as a .45. Now the projectile is obviously smaller, so the injuries are going to be less, but still can cause lots of damage. I've seen 3 kids die as a result of even injuries to the head and neck area. So not without definitely concern. But then there's people who make something like this, and that's a Lego gun. It's a 9mm handgun that someone made in Utah, and kind of had Legos around it. So for a kid, that was really appealing. For me, that was really appealing. That was pretty cool, right? I mean, but for a child, it makes it really difficult for us when we're trying to educate our children about firearms. That's a toy. That's not a toy. That's a real gun. And so if you have toy guns in your home, you're trying to navigate real versus fake, and how do you explain that to kids? This doesn't help. And this is why we teach all kids that no matter what a gun looks like, you don't ever pick it up, you don't ever touch it, you get away from that space and tell somebody. But that right there makes our jobs a whole lot easier, because every kid in the world is like, that's a cool gun, I'm going to pick that up, it's a toy. And then it ends in tragedy. And so these are some of the items that we talk about. Gun locks, gun safes, that can be really instrumental in keeping your kids safe. We can provide gun locks freely to anybody who needs, but we also will provide advanced gun safes as well. And I think this is where we need to be more proactive in providing gun safes. So this is what I want to meet people where they're at. And a gun lock is great. I have firearms at home, but I don't have every single one in there that has a gun lock on it. I use gun safe, and nothing. And I have my ammunition that's separate. But folks who have guns because they want to be safe. They want to feel safe. They want to be able to provide safety to their family if somebody comes through the door. And you can't do that if you have a gun lock or a trigger lock on there, is the argument. And so how do you meet people halfway? Well, let's put it in a gun safe where you can have easier access to it, but it doesn't have that other piece that you feel that is going to obstruct you from being able to keep your family safe. Now, what I argue is if you have a gun somewhere hidden in a closet or in a drawer, you're 100 times more unsafe at that point because your child has access to that firearm 24/7. The odds of somebody breaking down your door and coming into your home is less than 2 to 3%. And again, it depends on where you live. You have to know people's social situations to be able to understand why they're at risk, why they have a gun, why they feel they need to have a gun, to be able to navigate, to be able to say, all right, well, let's make you safer. Let's give you one of these. Let's try something different than what you're doing so that you don't end up in the ER. And for a long time, the American Academy of Pediatrics talked about if you have children in the home, you shouldn't have guns. That wasn't practical, in my opinion, because if you're a gun owner, then you pretty much turn a deaf ear to that. You're like, you know what? This is my Second Amendment right. I want to have a gun. I'm not going to listen to you. So for a long time, and even to this day, doctors, when I show up to the scene and start talking to folks about guns, some of them will turn their head and kind of roll their eyes a little bit and kind of walk away because they think I want to take their guns away. I'm like, I'm not here to take your guns away. I'm here to keep your kids safe. I own firearms, I have kids, but I work at a place where I see these injuries all the time. And I don't want your child to end up in that situation where they're in front of me. That's not a good situation. And so these are real scenarios that we have seen in the ER. This is a 3-year-old male who was playing at grandmother's house, found a gun in the bedside drawer, picked it up, was playing with it, and shot himself in the face. The initial injury was just under his nose, just right above the lip there, and it traversed into the back of the brain. He initially had CPR. The first responders got there, they intubated him, required epinephrine multiple times, was able to get stabilized and get to our hospital. But ultimately, because of that injury, where it traversed into the back of the brain, it was not going to be survivable. And 4 hours later, we pronounced him dead. So definitely something that is sad. This is totally preventable, right? In this situation, and this is what we talk about. At home, you may feel safe, you may be doing all the right things, but you got to remember where you're going to, where your kids are going to. As if you're a child who grew up with guns that were just kind of anywhere in the home, you have to realize that your parents probably still have those guns out there because there's no longer anybody in the house. They want to feel safe, and so they have that gun in an accessible area. And usually that's going to be in the bedroom. But when our kids go over there, we have to have this conversation and say, hey, is that gun put away? Do we have it locked up? Or let's get you a gun and say, let's put it up when the kids come over. And that's up to us as parents to make sure that we're doing that. This scenario is a 4-year-old who, and this is what started everything for me. This is what started it all rolling in 2017. I was working in the ER, 4-year-old presented to the ER after him and his brother were playing in the kitchen. They knew that mom had a gun. It was up in the cabinet, it was under the refrigerator. They climbed up onto the table, the counter. The 6-year-old brother pulled out the gun and shot his 4-year-old and killed him. And so that was the real, and a lot of that was, I had a 4-year-old at home at the same time. So I could see the images of my own child sitting, lying on that gurney. That really made me decide to do something different and try to educate folks. And then finally, the last scenario is a 10-year-old who was playing outside a video playing with friends like we've all done. And one of them got shot in the eye accidentally. Brought to the ER, his globe was deflated. We had a CT that showed that the BB was in the back of the eye. He went to the OR, had that BB removed, but was able to recover some of his vision. Not completely, but about 20%. Again, this is how quickly things happen. I'm going to show you guys a video of what that looks like. And so in this video, he's playing with an airsoft pellet gun. It jams, and so he's trying to figure it out. And he turns it to his face, twists down the barrel, and he goes off. And it's that quick. It just took seconds for that to happen. He was brought to the ER. He ultimately will survive. His eye will survive. He had full recovery of his vision, but things like that just happen so quick. And this is why we're going to talk about him. And that's a child of one of our ER nurses. And she knows what I do, and we talk about it all the time. But again, it's just so quick that things like that happen. And so when we talk about prevention center strategies, the things that we look at are best practice standards. What are the best things that we should be doing out there and educating our families with? What's the education that we can provide, and then ultimately the interventions that I do at the hospital that help to kind of drive that home. Best practices and key messages: safe children, safe play, and safe storage. Simple ideas. Safe children, we want to have open discussions with family, with friends, our neighbors about kids, and when they're coming over or they're going somewhere, even at school, we will be able to talk to our kids about what's the right thing to do when you find a gun. So safe play. If you're at school or you're at a friend's house and you find a gun, what are the steps that you should take to avoid getting injured? And step number 1 is stop, you don't touch, and then you run away and tell someone. Those are key steps that you have to kind of educate and train your kids to do. We'll talk to a lot of families who feel like, we don't know guns unknown, so we've never talked about the subject, but they're still at risk. They're going to still potentially find a place where there is a gun. And so I think we have to teach our kids this. This is what we do with some of the schools here in Fort Worth that are at high risk. We talk about these are the steps that you should need to take if you were to find a gun. And then finally, I think the most important part is safe storage. We got to learn to put our guns away. We got to learn to make sure they're locked up so our kids can't find them. They can't be stolen, whether it's in the home or in the car. And again, gun safes can be great because they have cable locks that you can lock around the seat of a car where you can put that gun in there and no one can literally steal it from your car if it's sitting in the console. So again, safe storage is going to be the most important part of what we talk about. And again, gun locks that we talked about as well. Gun safes are out there. Education, we provide toolkits that we can give to those who are out there educating, like Fort Worth Fire. And those toolkits include books that talk about gun safety, what kids, a kid's journey in finding a gun. In addition to, we do create coloring book as well, or the coloring pages in there as well. But those toolkits have a variety of things that you can go out there and educate with pictures, like the one we had earlier that showed that Lego gun. I think really drives the point home. In addition to pictures of something like this, ballistic gel. And I think this is really important for families to be able to see. When you see a picture like this where you can see these up close, this is really one of the best tools that we've ever developed, I think, for families to look at. You can actually see the trajectory of the amount of damage a BB can do versus the 45. And that's really important to be able to see the difference in those two projectiles, because people are like, man, I didn't realize a BB gun could do that much damage, or even a pellet gun. But when you see them side by side, it becomes real. And so I think that's part of it. That's part of the visual display then we have family interventions that anybody's able to apply for, where we bring families in who are at high risk, so their families own a gun, they don't lock it up, and they have kids under the age of 12. We put it in a scenario where they can, kids don't know what's happening, parents can watch from another room, and we see what kids will do. Give them a 15-minute timer to see if they find a gun. Our initial pilot study showed that 80% of those kids did do the right thing. 60% found the gun, picked it up, and looked down the barrel or pointed at their sibling. And that's just, when you see parents, their eyes, their reactions are just frightening. And every time I see it, the hair on the back of my neck goes up. But those are really important. Those are really good aha moments. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just want you to see what could possibly happen in your home. Hopefully we're able to get people to say, all right, I need to do something different. I need to review what I do now and do something different, whether it's buying a gun safe, putting a gun lock on there, so that kids gain access to firearms. So one of the things that we talk about are educational goals for children. Something that we all can teach is you definitely want kids to respect firearms. We want them to treat every gun as it's loaded. We want to teach those fundamental ideas of stop, don't touch, run away, and you tell somebody. Those are going to be key things that I think are important that every kid should know. Obviously, never put your finger on a trigger, never point a gun at someone is important as well, but the steps that we want them to do is never pick it up, right? But there are families who feel comfortable because they hunt, and their kids in those scenarios, but those are the things that we want to be able to impart to them. Also, differences between real and toy guns. You can't always tell the difference. That's why it's important just to leave them alone, don't pick them up, don't touch them. And then peer pressure situations as well. We were all kids once, we were all teenagers once, we know kind of that pressure that's there to do something and to be that tough guy. But we don't want to be able to fall into those traps. We want to make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to fall in that trap because there's not going to be a gun around for them to pick up. It's going to be locked up. And I think it's also a good perspective to allow kids to understand why people have guns, right? We associate, I think, in our society right now that if you have a gun, you're a bad person. I mean, that's just, that's what you see out there. But there are people who have guns for reasons, whether it's police, whether it's military, whether you hunt. There are reasons for it. It's a tool that's used, but it can be used in a negative way. And kids need to understand that that's not always a bad thing. And I think our older age group, our teenagers, one of the things that we did with Arlington Lamar is we talk a lot about the peer pressure situations, but also coping skills. I think that really becomes important. We have to teach our kids at an early age how to cope with situations, and that you don't always have to respond in a negative way. And what can you do in those situations? You can take a step back, you can go listen to music, you can write in a journal, anything that you kind of get your mind off of that initial thought that I need to go hurt somebody because they hurt me in whatever way, whether it was physical, whether it was verbal, emotional. We have to help our kids understand and find ways to get them to kind of get all that aggression out. I think that's really important. We need to see mentors, we need to see folks that are doing the right thing. And that's really important with our teenagers as we evolve and we evolve this program into how do we make it better? How can we make a difference in that group? Because that's the hardest group to reach, I think. Teenagers, you can talk to the younger kids and they're going to listen, and if you have a positive role model in their lives, you can kind of build on that. Teenagers are going to make their own decisions, and we can help them navigate and find better ways to do things and not always have a negative response. I think we can help decrease some of the violence that we see in our city. Again, that's not an easy task. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we have to work on that continuously. And so this is one of the things that we're talking about. Emotions come and go. They can be really mild or intense. It's how you respond to those emotions that are bad or good. Your emotions, we all have emotions, and but those aren't bad. It's how you respond in those situations that are really taxing you. So again, coping strategy is really important. We're going to have some coping cards that are going to be a part of that toolkit that can help folks kind of teach other kids what to do, how you respond, and that's going to be really important. Children and toy guns is another question we get a lot of. Is should kids play with toy guns? Again, we're not here to talk about whether you should have a gun or not, a real gun, but from a toy gun, kids will find a way to make a gun. My kid never had a gun, but he uses his hand every single time early on in his life to play cowboys and how they play with that, whether it's perceived toy gun, whether it's a hand or other plastic toy. It's how they play with it, how they engage other kids around them with that gun. If they're really aggressive into other kids' faces, then we want to be able to look at that play and say, no, this is not good. We want to redirect them and say, all right, we're not going to play with guns if you're going to be aggressive like that. And that's where we start doing that. And do kids need 10 guns, 10 plastic guns? Probably not. 2 or 3 to kind of make, if you're a family who feels it strong enough that they can have a gun or a toy gun, then I think 1 or 2 or 3 is probably okay. Again, we have to start to build how to respect guns, even though they're toy guns versus real guns, and say, all right, when we're done playing with these, we're going to put them away, you don't have access to them until we let you have access to them. And then, again, you have to be able to be a part of that play so that we know that the negative play is not going to be there, or we can redirect that play. Visual displays that we use, we talked about these right here, but we also have larger ones that show that from 2 feet away, you can shoot a BB gun and pellet gun into ballistic gel, and it'll penetrate about 4 to 6 inches. 4 to 6 inches in EMS is pretty significant, and this is why 3 kids have died as a result of that. But I think all of us will say, yeah, we played with these when we were kids. Red Rider, is only at 450 feet per second, no big deal. It takes about 250 feet per second to break the skin and break the bone. So definitely significant, even though we as kids perhaps played with these and feel like this day and age it's okay to still do that. They're not harmful, but again, we've seen that they can cause significant damage. And here's another picture of kind of the ballistic gels that show a BB gun, a pellet gun, a 22, a 9mm, and a 45. You can see the destruction that it'll cause within the tissue there. And again, this is the Aim for Safety pilot program as well as the intervention that we provide. I'm going to show you guys a video real quick to see if it'll work. This is one of the interventions that we had a few years ago. And in this scenario, we give them the opportunity to play in the space, and within seconds of walking down, he finds a gun. And there's still adults in the room. When we talked to this kid at the end of this intervention, he was trying to check to see if it was loaded. That was his way of checking to see, even though he's been trained and talked to about gun safety and how it should be done, but the first thing he did was kind of look down the barrel, his finger in the barrel, he's pointing at his brother. And again, so it's not that we don't want to trust our kids, but we don't want them to make tragic mistakes. And this is why it's our, as parents, it's our, it should be up to us to be able to keep them safe, make sure that we put those guns away, put them in safety devices. We also partner with Defender Outdoor. We have a kiosk there that basically goes through some scenarios with kids. They find a gun, they're obviously asked what they should do. We want parents that are kind of in a passive way to be able to engage in this screen to learn more about what their kids are going to do and respond to, as well as we do some educational questions for families, for parents, so they can kind of go through and learn something hopefully about firearms. Again, the goal is to get folks to engage, see what their kids might do, but also know that there's other ways to keep your kids safe. It's in Defender Outdoor where there's an opportunity to go ahead and buy a safe. I mean, it's really all about just getting more of these devices in people's homes to keep them safe. Ultimately, we can provide toolkits for those who are interested in being able to educate folks out there, and that's going to be it. Any questions?
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I wish there was questions. But, I mean,
So one of the things that, we provide gun safes. Let me just kind of go over this real quick. We provide gun safes, and so definitely a high risk location. These are pretty simple to use. It comes with a cable that you can kind of put around whatever you like to keep it lock tube. You go through that part of the device and you just kind of slide it on there, close it, and lock it up. I mean, it's as simple as that. And you have a key that you can use. Obviously, we want to make sure that kids can access the key. That's really important. But there's also other devices we provide that are keyed or push button as well. So you can come up with your own 4-digit code, put that in there, and then your child should.
So I guess one of the questions out would be, what are the resources? So our guys go out there and they see something unsafe. Instead of getting into the politics of this is how you should be or what you should do, is there a site that cooks would say, hey, go here and get this information, or?
You can definitely go to aimforsafety.org, which is our firearm injury prevention site. You can reach out to me or Eric to talk about that, but we're going to provide you guys gun safe. So I think the biggest point about what we're talking about today is how can you guys help us to decrease that risk, right? So we need to give you the tools to be able to do that. So you see an unsafe situation, you don't have to have a political conversation. Just say, hey, we should probably put that firearm away. We're going to give you something to make you safer right now. Because right now you depend on people. You talk to people. We go out there and say, hey, this is all the information, but we have to still depend on them to go out and do it and buy that gun safe and make that change. But if you provide them that today, then the hope is they're going to make that change now. And the next step is that gun goes into a safe. Everyone will have to sign a release form. That's part of the giving away a gun safe. But again, you're giving them the tools right now, like we give them, life jackets, like we give medication lockboxes. All of those things, we want to be proactive and be able to help them make a change.
Two-part deal. One, on that, Steve, he's given us the whole team. We have gun safes here in my office. If our guys see it, we can deliver them out. The second part is you did it in our training trainer. How do you get those conversations started? How do you go about engaging these parents? I think that'd be good for us to hear.
Yeah, I think what I do typically is I talk about what I see in the ER. So I think that's the easiest thing to do is you bring up the conversation by saying, hey, we're seeing a lot of injuries in our county and our city because of firearms that are not put away. What are you guys doing to keep your family safe? How can we help you with that department? You don't want to ever be judgmental, and that's the whole political part, right? People feel like they're being judged and they're not putting their guns away, and they're not going to be honest about that. And so you engage them in a different way. Talk about safety. What are you doing to make sure that you have perhaps fences around your pool, you put life jackets for your kids. What are we doing to make sure that our kids are safe? I think it's a great way. I always tell folks, put it on me. Say, Doc says that we should be asking these questions because we're seeing so many kids in our ER, and I think that's a fair question. No one should ever get offended. I know that people do. And that's what we're talking about, just to normalize the conversation so that people aren't offended. I would love for gun owners, I think people talk about, the gun owners are the problem. They're actually the answer to this and the solution to the problem, right? If we were to, as a gun owner, say, all right, I'm going to just be up front, I have guns in the home, but they're all locked up. Man, conversation's over, right? You don't have to worry about that awkward conversation or starting that conversation. Other things I tell people is text message. If you're going to go somewhere, just text message someone. Say, hey, we're coming over, my kids are, you kind of frame that in, my kids would like to get into anything and everything. So, you guys have firearms, and I watch that. I think that's one of the things you can say. You can start with, hey, kids are really curious, they like getting everything, or you guys have firearms in the home, and are they locked up correctly or safely, and do you all need some research? And then you can reference aim for safety, or say, hey, if you guys have one that's, out and about, let's do something right now to make this safe.
That's one of the things that's included in these toolkits. This is what the toolkit will look like. So I'm kind of revamping it a little bit, and in here it's broken down into a user guide and what each section has. So it'll have coaching conversations, how to start those conversations, how to host presentations, and just collateral, how to use some of that in there also. But kind of broken down, it has a copy of the new book that we have that Dr. Guzman mentioned. So this book here about guns, tools, English and Spanish, and then it has our flip book in there also. So we could I'll get these out once I get everything finalized with these. You'll get those once you go through the training.
When you say you get those out, that's what's coming to you.
Yeah, I already got, I think you gave me 3 last time we did the trainer, 3 or 4.
Yeah, these are a little bit updated, so I'll get you the updated materials.
Awesome. And then we're, there's still are purchasing some of these ballistic stuff.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful. This really, so, you know, for the hardest person to reach in these conversations is the dad. Men are always, they know what they're doing when it comes to guns, but they are also very intrigued by, you know, look at something like this, like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you can kind of bring them in from that point. Like, all right, you guys have firearms. This is what happens with the 9 and the 45 and BB gun. And then that conversation kind of goes from there. And they're more receptive to having that conversation when they start looking at these ballistic gels.
Yeah, if you're at a table, you set those on a table, people come running because they get curious what they are. My favorite is a lot of people think that they're joints. And so they come to her and they'll be like, oh, that's not a joint. I'm like, no, but let's talk.
Y'all also have the little cards, I don't know if you brought them, we get the little pictures of like the 5 different guns and
Yeah, so that will be included in the toolkit as well. I'm getting those made on foam boards. So you'll have the, like, you know, which gun is real, and then like the Lego gun in there also.
Yep.
So I'll have those visuals in there also.
Those are good conversation starters as well. Just kind of pick out the real one. And then ultimately the answers are all real, right? We treat every firearm, no matter what it looks like a real firearm. And then we kind of get into BB gun and pellet gun, airsoft, or just air-powered rifles can be just as dangerous because they're traveling. Some of those projectiles are traveling at 2,200 feet per second, which is what a 22 is traveling at. And not that 450 feet per second like a Red Ryder. And so, and you can buy, you know, these over, you know, at Walmart. You can go anywhere and get something that's shooting 1,600 feet per second. They even make electric BB guns that are shooting 1,000 supposed rounds a minute. I mean, that to me is crazy. But that's out there. And so those can be extremely dangerous.
Not really, this is just for our purposes. So one of the main focuses is getting this information to the stations that are gonna affect the most people. So if you think about the ones that are doing all of the show and tells, you're talking about station 21, 26, 37, probably 8. I mean, you're looking at probably 10 stations that typically the way our show and tells go, you get some rookie on the back and the rookie says, here, this is what a hammer looks like, or this is what a water hose, and that's important, they want to see all that. But this is a great additional conversation topic. We just have to clear it with the school before we go in.
then we got clearance from superintendent, guys, he has cleared us.
Well, I think, you know, some of those younger kids.
I've gone as young as kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
And so, and those kids are just as eager as, you know, the 4th and 5th graders to talk about this and go over it. It's just a matter of the presenting part of it.
Is that part of the toolkit introductions on how to talk to young kids?
Yeah, and then also you'll have one of our flip books in there that kind of goes over through, it starts off with just like basic safety, so, you know, helmets, car seat, and then it gets into gun use.
You can talk to 5-year-olds.
Well, there is
They want to see things,
Right.
touch things,
Right.
hold things.
Docking got us a thing, we did the trainer, like how to have a conversation with a kid, how to have it with a teen, how to have it with an adult. It was really just a couple line starters that we use in the firework line.
That's exactly what we
And for
need.
the younger child, it's you know, we don't want to get so gun heavy in my mind. I think it helps with parents as well. This is a part of a bigger conversation of just overall injury prevention and safety. So that's why that flip book is helpful to talk about. And when I did it with you know, kindergarten and first grade, we just talk about, okay, what should you do if you're riding a bike, right? And if you're in the water, what should you be wearing?
Right.
And just those, and then you kind of just transition into, all right, what about you guys are telling us and real guns and how, and I'm amazed at about those kids know what to do.
Right.
Whether or not they'll do that in actual practice. They can repeat it to you, you know, the way we want to hear it.
Well, I like even just a simple stop, go find an adult and report it, or, I mean, you got 3 things to do, that's not touch it and go find somebody.
And I think the most important part of that is to stop, right? They have
Right.
to hear that this is the right thing to do, which is don't pick it up, don't
Right.
touch it. If you can just kind of get that in their heads, then maybe they see our faces on their shoulders going, see a gun, and then they're like, oh, it's told not to pick it up. And then that right there gives us an opportunity to, all right, let's make a better decision, let's walk away from it, or it gives us time to walk into the room as parents and find them with that, whatever the situation is. So it's just getting that simple, and I would tell parents, you know, even at 2 and 3, we can have that conversation to say, if you see this, stop. And that's it. I mean, and then build on that. And you know, as you get older, and you start building on the other parts of that stuff. But it's always, you gotta introduce the idea, because if they don't have that in their heads, they just know that, oh, I can pick it up. There's nothing to it. So I think that's the real important part.
Yeah, we've identified the top 10 zip codes. 29 is number 1. 17, 36, 26 is for child-related gun injuries.
And I'm always willing to be out there and do it with you guys as well. I mean, you know, we can do it together until they feel comfortable enough to be able to just, bam, you're on their own. And we're more than happy to be there as much as we can.
The guys loved the feedback. We had our last CE last month was, it was basically, it was prostitution, children, whatever. But I mean, getting to see the end result and how their reports to PD affected, they love that stuff in the same way. I mean, the feedback part of it for them is that you guys made a difference when you did this.
I think anytime you talk to somebody, it becomes a difference, right? It's just having that conversation. And then I think even you do want it either way.
Right.
I mean, that's just bam through the roof. Because you know that they're going to likely use it if you put it in their hands right now. And that's key. I mean, because you guys are in their homes all the time.
Right. Thank you.